I will say a prayer for the souls of your crew.
New World has been a massive letdown for people like me who bought into the original hype. The PvP-centric MMO had a lot of potential to take advantage of the MMO community that was generally unhappy with the lack of quality content in current MMOs. While New World peaked early in popularity, it was also quick to fizzle once people started to reach max level and see that there was a major lack of endgame content outside of PvP. In my case, I never took a serious approach to New World. I sunk about 35 hours into the game when it was first released. I never really had the goal of making New World my primary full-time MMO. I was content just being a WoW Andy, but I also needed to change of pace. This led me to playing Final Fantasy XIV during Shadowlands Season 2, mainly because I was unhappy with the state of the game and had become a little bit burned out, just like a lot of other people. During my WoW hiatus, my time in Final Fantasy XIV taught me a few things. First off, I really still do enjoy a grind. I enjoyed leveling, I enjoyed learning all the different jobs in 14, and that also included grinding for materials so that I could create crafted gear for Raid, which was an entirely new concept for me. I also found out that professions in MMOs can actually be fun. While I didn't enjoy all the crafting nuances in Final Fantasy XIV, I did appreciate how deep the content went, and how it gave people an alternative way to play the game. Lastly, I learned that I need content that scales with difficulty in order to keep me fully engaged in a game. While 14 had visually stunning raids, there was very little for me to do on nights where I wasn't raiding, which led to me perpetually leveling jobs, doing professions, and farming different weapon skins. When New World released in September of 2021, I picked it up and I decided I was going to play solo. Most of my friends just didn't want to invest their time into yet another MMO, or any MMO at all. So I made a character and started the leveling process. I was hooked early, but not in a way that I expected. While the combat was a fun style, I found the open world was just too darn easy. Just about everything could be dodged, and if you were careful, there's really nothing that was overly threatening that could kill your character. Instead, I was hooked by the crafting and gathering system. I'm not someone who generally likes professions in an MMO. In fact, I'm somewhat dreading the professions in Dragonflight, despite the fact that I also firmly believe that it's going to make the game better as a whole. But in New World, I would get derailed from questing by going down a path of chopping down trees and mining ore, only to open the world map and find out that I was going in the wrong direction, and I found myself having to backtrack a lot just because I would veer off path because I was just having fun farming. There's some kind of sick compulsion that lives deep inside of me that tells me just to chop down one more tree, or skin one more turkey, or farm one more node before I can get back to the main game. But this compulsion has only ever really applied to New World. I mentioned that I never hit max level, despite the fact that I sunk about 35 hours into the game. It was grindy as hell, and I actually really enjoyed it. However, there were times where after I turned in a bunch of quests in the local town, I would then pick up the next set of quests, open my map, and find that the quests were just a little bit too all over the place. And in those moments, I had to have a little bit of internal reflection as I realized that apparently I'm so lazy that the thought of walking in a game exhausts me to the point where I just need to log out. That's what I did. That happened a few times until I ultimately just decided not to log in anymore. Then, the general population started to fizzle and wane within the game. Servers were shut down and consolidated. Duping items and currency made it so that those who weren't aware of those bugs, like myself, were never really going to compete in a PvP-driven MMO. There was also the fact that I'm someone who enjoys PvE content, and the more I read about builds and min-maxing, the more I realized the endgame just would not be all that appealing to me. Despite the past, I'm at a point now where I want to give New World another chance. I have been paying attention to some of the updates from the developers, and while I do not see New World becoming my primary game, I want to see if it's a game that I can enjoy playing secondarily to WoW. Shadowlands is finally coming to an end, and with Dragonflight set to release November 28th, I have about a month and a half to give New World a fair shake. I'm planning on starting a fresh character given how much time has gone by since I last played. Here is what I hope to see with New World after doing roughly 7 hours of testing on the PTR. First off, I'd love to see some interesting combat. This is something that I would really like to see throughout the leveling process and early on in my experience. I would like to come up with my own playstyle and weapon combinations without having to worry about wasting skill points or messing up my character build. I would like the freedom to experiment, but I would also like to feel a sense of danger in the world. I hope that mob intelligence has improved and that quest hubs will lead you to places where there are higher mob counts and it's challenging to cut through them to reach your final objective. I also hope to see a variety of mobs earlier in the game so that it doesn't feel like every encounter is the same. I'd also like to see improved questing. I spoiled myself a little bit here having played on the PTR, which is where this footage is from, but I want a better questing experience overall. I really like what they've done by putting more guardrails around the main story quest line, and I feel like so far it's given me the ability to explore while also keeping me on the right path in order to maximize my in-game time. My first experience leveling in New World was nowhere near as streamlined. I wasted a ton of time. And while I know they've redesigned the early questing, I hope that the redesign for the questing overall to 60 isn't too far behind. In a game as open and full of distractions as New World is, I think this redesign is just well overdue. Not only is the guided experience better, but the quest hubs are not as spread out as I remember, and it feels like I'm doing a whole lot less running from A to Z than I did before. Although maybe I'm just coping, but I genuinely enjoyed the new questing experience. I'd also like to see weapon power and better scaling with PvE in mind. I'm going into the PvE portion of New World just completely blind. All I know is that they've added dungeons and some raid-like content. I don't know more than that, but I do know that with PvE in mind, I want to see more variety with weapons. I tested the Greatsword on the PTR just like everybody else, and the primary thing that I was excited to see is that the Greatsword actually scaled evenly with either the strength or dexterity traits. This gave me a bit more freedom with my character development, and that got me really excited about the potential of different weapon combinations. I eventually gravitated towards using the Greatsword with a polearm, which is not something I expected I'd be able to do. To me, this really opened up the way I was able to play the game. I expected the Greatsword to scale with strength, which to me meant that I'd be committing to playing 2 melee-based, slow-attacking weapons. To find out that I could pair a quick polearm with the Greatsword was a really fun surprise. So I'm really hoping that weapon and character power scale better with a variety of traits across the board. I'd also like to see more quality of life options. The last time I played New World, I had delocalized storage, meaning I had to run from town to town based on where I was storing whatever material. I could not tell if my storage was localized or not on the PTR, since I only went to one town hub, but if they have fixed that, I would be absolutely ecstatic. Additionally, I'm hoping they add more fast travel nodes and lower the cooldown on the in-recall. The way that I play, I could see myself focusing on combat-driven questing on some days, while other days I might just go out and clear a forest on my own. Either way, I would prefer not to mindlessly just run from one point to the other, and I'd like to see questing take place with lots of things to farm, gather, and collect on the way, while also giving me the ability to clear my bags and pick up where I left off relatively easily. I say this knowing that Amazon does have the intention of adding ground mounts at some point, but I think better quality of life until then is greatly needed. Lastly, I would like to see the game become more socially driven. The servers were popping off when the game released, and given that I'm picking up the game a week before their first major content patch, I'm really holding out hope that there's a small resurgence of interest in the game. While Amazon is calling it their first expansion, I view this as an opportunity to re-release the game in the state that it really should have been a year ago. I want to go into it essentially as a noob with very limited knowledge about everything that has been added to see if it can hold my interest until November, which is when I plan to no-life Dragonflight. Which leads me to my last point regarding New World, and this is likely the primary reason I want to give it another chance. New World does not require a subscription to play. It had a box sticker price, and I haven't had to pay any money since, nor do I intend to. World of Warcraft is a game that I love playing, and Mythic Plus is what keeps me playing it, but New World gives me the ability to pop in and out whenever I want just for that change of pace. I'm someone who needs that, and from time to time, given the fact that New World and World of Warcraft are very different games, I think that New World could play a complementary role as far as how I play games. I plan to take a casual approach to New World and learn the game at my own pace, whereas World of Warcraft will be my primary game with the majority of my time invested in it. But when I want to just chill out, chop down a forest, and kill some corrupted zombies, I'll have New World in my back pocket. So please, Amazon, don't let me down again. So if you guys have any advice for me coming back to New World after all this time, please let me know in the comments below.